Good morning. My name's Jim Stanger, and I'd just like to do a quick video on a recent publication I came across on the effect of prolonged oocyte storage. This was published in Reproductive Biomedicine Online in November 25, but they're always fairly slow in getting their articles onto PubMed. But it's an interesting one because it is to do with how long you can store eggs for, and it's related to fertility preservation and oocyte donation. So this is an article I said appeared in November 2025. Um, Looking at the effects of prolonged cryopreservation more than 10 years on reproductive outcomes. Well, they said it's a systematic review meta-analysis, but in reality, it's just a collection of small things. So I first came across this in LinkedIn when RBMO was trying to promote it, and this is what their editor's comments were on LinkedIn. Oocyte cryopreservation is essential for fertility preservation, yet the impact of prolonged storage on cryosurvival, embryological, and pregnancy outcome remains unclear. This study by Kaufman et al. Provides an important first step in addressing the knowledge gap regarding prolonged oocyte cryostorage. While age remains a pertinent predictive factor for fertility outcomes, the available case report data summarized in this review do not show obvious harm from prolonged storage. The authors do conclude that the small sample size, methodological heterogeneity, and multiple co-founders identified necessitate large-scale prospective studies before definitive clinical recommendations can be made regarding the effect of prolonged cryostorage beyond 10 years. It's an open access article, and you can read the from this. The point is that it's the first 10 years is a long time for oocytes to be stored. And this is really just a collection of small case histories. So let's go and look and see what they say. So the authors say this. As oocyte cryopreservation becomes increasingly utilized for urgent and planned reasons, it is imperative that clinicians and patients have data on the safety and efficacy of long-term oocyte cryopreservation. As social trends drive fertility preservation practices into consensus in people pursuing autologous parenthood, the age of planned egg freezing is transitioning early in life, and oocytes are entering the freezer sooner and staying there longer. That is, instead of women having their oocytes stored when they're in the mid-30s, more women are being made aware of this and having their oocytes frozen in their mid-20s, which is the optimal time. But they may not be ready for parenthood for another 10, 15 years. And that's a long time to put off having children, not knowing whether the oocytes stored 15 years ago are still going to be viable. And this is one of the first papers giving you some suggestion that it is, and that's why I'm doing the video. So the authors go back and say, so individuals pursuing third-party reproductive options, donor egg banks maintain inventories of oocytes frozen many years prior, providing immediate availability without donation recruitment delays and allowing recipients greater selection options. But the bottom line is, like frozen sperm, some of these eggs may be held in storage for many years. And so there. Okay. So what the authors did, they searched the registers, they found a whole series of studies, but they linked it down to 25 papers. There were 9 large-scale reviews, and there were 16 case reports, 15 of those for under 10 years, but there were 11 reports of more than 10 years storage. So this is their story. So this is the data. For the larger studies, there were 9. The average age of freezing was 35, which is just at the very cusp of being okay. Store for 3 or 4 years, cryosurvival 80%, fertilization rate 72%, 40% blastulation rate, I assume, of the eggs fertilized, implantation rate 35%, clinical pregnancy rate 40%, and live birth rate 28%. Now that is actually pretty good considering the oocytes are coming from 35, ranging from 23 to 41. So there's a big gap. And this group up here, more than 35, will be bringing this rate down significantly. It would be far better for the studies not to have oocytes frozen over 35, but I'm sure they will come. There are 11 case histories that the authors identified, also having a wide range from 17 to 51. The problem with this is that most studies looking at women under 20 nearly always demonstrate poorer fertility outcomes, and having few eggs frozen up at around this range makes this data very, very limited. But they were stored for more than 10 years. This is the age at freezing, not when they were being used. But the survival rate was very similar to the younger for the very short storage. Fertilization rate was just a good 76% compared to 72. Blast duration rate was a little bit smaller, but not significantly different. The implant, because we're only looking at small numbers of oocytes here, so it doesn't really make a lot of difference, but it's in the right trend. 58% implantation rate, 49% clinical pregnancy rate, 49% live birth rate. These things are quite different, and you need to take this. You don't take this to face value, but you're getting half the women pregnant when these oocytes have been stored for more than 10 years and used. And if you just go back and compare their data, let's make this a bit smaller so you can see. There we go. If you split those up for the 5 cases under 10 years, but these 11 cases, so the whole paper is really about these 11 case reports. Mean age of freezing at 33, length of storage 12 years. So these are being stored somewhere about 33 years and being used in the early 40s. Cryo survival, 75%. Fertilization rate 69%, and even though this is significantly different, I don't think people would be too worried about it. This is just an artifact of numbers. It may be real, but we won't know for a long time. Still, 69% fertilization rate is more than enough to give you a reasonable number of blastocysts, and of these that survive, a really good implantation rate, probably because when they're frozen at a very young age. And look at 60%, even though it's probably only a few cases, I don't have the data on it. It's still pretty impressive. So, the author's comment. During cryostorage, oocytes can be subjected to tank fatigue, secondary to depletion of liquid nitrogen and ambient temperature fluctuations when the vacuum-sealed chambers are open, resulting in premature partial thaw of cryopreserved material. The author's results indicate that no apparent correlation can be found between the cryostorage duration and embryological pregnancy outcomes. Live births occurred from oocytes that have been frozen for as long as 15 years, and even though it's only a few case history, that's enough to give you confidence to pursue that with a few more cases, and more publications will either confirm that or refute it. And over 60% of these long-term embryos that have been stored created embryos and were transferred after more than a decade of storage. So this article reviewed several large-scale cases where the period of storage was only a few years, and a number of smaller case studies where the storage was really very long. Both showed similar outcomes, with some suggestion that prolonged storage of more than 10 years may reduce the fertilization rate, but only by a small amount and not enough to significantly reduce the number of embryos for transfer, to impact on pregnancy rate. And storage for more than 10 years is a long time and will take a while for a sufficient number of case histories and then reviews to be published, probably not for another 10 years. But you may like to make the comment that it's still a long time for oocytes to be exposed to repeated dewar openings and straw movements and presumably auditing, etc. Vitrified samples are very vulnerable, are very exposed to transient environmental stress. They're very vulnerable for it, and that even though cell metabolism may be virtually zero, 196, we still don't know that it is zero, and the oocyte being such a large is a vulnerable cell, it is of some concern. So these results are pretty impressive. So, but what is apparent is that if the oocytes were stored when the woman was young, say under 35, their quality is not sufficiently diminished to be of concern. And in effect, their chance of pregnancy is not of a 45-year-old woman that have been transferred, but it's a 35-year-old younger woman. I think this is almost as close as to eternal youth as anyone's likely to come. It's important because only about 10% of women who freeze their oocytes for fertility preservation will return to use them even after 3 to 10 years. Unused oocytes may therefore accumulate in dewars and often are donated for research or donation, but they may have been in storage for, could even be, as long as IVF oocytes been going, which is about 10, 15 years. It's reassuring to clinics that if a woman has elective oocyte cryopreservation in her 20s, then the oocytes will remain just as viable 10 years, well, I say may revolve. And I think this paper is a good one to cite to clients asking about that question. It's also important to oocyte donation companies that eggs frozen can remain in the banks for a decade or more, and that when used, the recipients have a realistic chance of pregnancy. Having said that, the rates are not as great as fresh oocytes with live birth, and this has been demonstrated in lots of studies. A lot depends on the age of the woman at egg freezing and of the number of oocytes, because not all oocytes are really viable, probably about a quarter are not. This is still a dynamic field of IVF application, but it is clear that using younger oocytes is the key, not the age of the woman at transfer. So this publication, while largely limited to case histories, is important and may encourage more clinics to report their limited experience to lend support to the author's observation. So it's the end. I'd just like to say my name's James Stanger. I'm an embryologist with more than 50 years experience, and these videos are my attempt to bridge the gap between information you'll need for your fertility treatment and the most recent articles available to you and your clinics and your clinic staff. I'm not a medical person, and this information is not medical advice, but it may help you in knowing what questions to ask about your treatment with your doctor and maybe help in understanding the advice. So if you like what I'm doing, please select subscribe to see more of my videos and tell other people about how wonderful it is. Just like to make a mention, this is funded currently by my other work, which is running an online EQA program at FirtAid, which is to do with staff training and competency. And I think I'd like to stop you there. I'd like to recognise that IVF is a personal journey that involves the action of many different techniques and theories and staff, and it helps to understand all aspects of the journey. And I hope this information may be of value. I'd like to thank you and stop and say good luck in your treatment.